The reason we look at rodents is we want to study animals in order to prevent and predict effects in humans. We know that every agent that causes cancer in animals will produce it. I'm sorry, and I hope you'll edit this in the revision. We know that every agent that causes cancer in humans will produce it in animals when adequately tested. That is in the preamble to the World Health Organization International Agency for Research on Cancer. Almost a third of the subjects that we know for sure will cause cancer in humans have been identified in well-conducted animal studies and were found to do so only after the animal studies indicated carcinogenicity. So we want to pay attention to what the animals are trying to tell us. We must learn from the animals because we do not want to treat ourselves and our children like subjects in an experiment without any controls. We, at Environmental Health Trust, we have worked with a number of organizations to demonstrate that the current limits do not protect wildlife, the natural environment, or people. We have submitted evidence to the FCC and the FDA repeatedly showing that current levels affect insects and birds' behavior and health, as I showed you in some of the slides presented earlier today. Environmental assessment is needed, and that was the determination that the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals reached in 2021. Now, Dr. Chamberlain will share with you that while the Court of Appeals was reviewing the data in 2021, the FCC secretly tested phones, and the results of those secret tests were only made known to Environmental Health Trust with the release of Freedom of Information Act requests quite recently. Phone use has increasingly been linked to technoference. Studies have been done showing that mother-child pairs, dyads, have increased hyperactivity with exposure during pregnancy. Other studies have found that the most basic human interactions, those of parents and children, husbands and wives, are interfered with by technology. This phenomenon has become so widespread that the psychiatry world labels it as technoference. It has now become the subject of books and conferences, and we understand that technology is disturbing the most important and intimate parts of life today. And indeed, there are internet addiction camps. There are ways to detoxify families from the addictive properties of technology. And this is becoming one of the major foci for Environmental Health Trust under new leadership. Now I turn it over to Dr. Rob Brown, who is going to talk with you about the human health effects from radio frequency radiation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Very happy to be here today. Let me share my screen. Okay, does that look good?
Robert, would you be able to do the advanced tab?
Okay.
You just stop sharing and then do portion of screen. Hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so hit the green button, share, and then on the top where it says advanced. Perfect, looks good.
Great. Okay, thank you. It's very happy to be here and contribute to this critically important topic. Carrying on in this next section, I'm going to cover some specifics about the health effects that can occur from exposure to non-ionizing radiation, and in particular, radio frequency radiation, that emitted by cell phones and wireless technology. Who am I and why am I interested in this? Well, as Dr. Davis mentioned, I'm a board-certified diagnostic radiologist, and I've been practicing for over 30 years. And what that means is that I've been interpreting the images that are created by exposing the body to both ionizing forms of radiation, that is, in X-rays, CAT scans, angiograms, but also non-ionizing radiation. When somebody has an MRI, they're placed in a strong magnetic field and the body is bombarded with radiofrequency radiation, and the actual atoms in the cells vibrate and get knocked off axis, and that process enables us to get images. So I'm very familiar with the penetration of radiation and some of the physiological effects that we can see from that exposure. I did become interested in the health effects of environmental toxins, and I did write the book Toxic Home, Conscious Home, which was my venture out into this realm. And I looked at both biochemical toxins and also energetic toxins, such as light and electromagnetic fields. And that's really what brought me into this arena here. And Dr. Davis and the board invited me to become the Vice President for Scientific Research and Clinical Affairs at the Environmental Health Trust, which is a wonderful opportunity for me. So in this segment, I'm going to discuss some basic physics just to make sure that everybody understands what radiation is. And then we're going to go into some of the nonspecific cellular effects of EMFs, and then look at the biological and physiological repercussions that may occur from that nonspecific cellular effect. And finally, I'm going to give you some recommendations. So to begin with, it's important to understand that all radiation is a form of energy and it travels in waves. Those waves can be distinguished from one another by their wavelength and corresponding frequency. We can easily demonstrate this by shining a white light through a prism. Because the white light is composed of different wavelengths in the visible light spectrum, they will separate from one another due to differences in their refraction and produce a rainbow pattern. So each of the colors of the rainbow have a different wavelength and a different frequency. Because all electromagnetic radiation travels at the same speed in a given medium, the wavelength and the frequency are inversely proportional to one another. If you look at the graphic on the right, the blue wave on top has a high frequency and a short wavelength, whereas the red waveform on the bottom has a long wavelength and a low frequency. Now, the visible light spectrum is only a very small component of the electromagnetic spectrum, which you can see here, which includes frequencies from 1 cycle per second, or is termed extremely low frequency, all the way up through gamma radiation. In the natural world, we experience the Earth's magnetic field and the continuous rhythmic pulsations of the Earth's vibration, which are called Sherman resonant frequencies. And superimposed on this, we experience the diurnal cyclical exposure of sunlight, which is composed of visible light, infrared, and some UV. Radio frequencies are not found in any significant intensity in our natural world. These frequency bands have been tapped for industry for the purposes of wireless communication. With any radiation exposure, the greatest intensities are located closest to the source of the radiation, and they rapidly dissipate with increasing distance. In this slide, you can imagine that the flashlight, which is a source of electromagnetic radiation, is close to the hand and the hip, and so those parts of the body are going to receive the greatest amount of exposure. If you were wearing a smartwatch, the wrist would be the area of the body that would have the greatest exposure. If you were wearing smart glasses, it would be your eyes, and AirPods would deliver the greatest exposure to the middle ear, inner ear, and brain. Keep in mind that with some devices, and in particular cell phones, if the unit is connecting with a nearby antenna, the intensity of the radiation coming from the phone will be much less than if it were trying to connect with a faraway antenna or a satellite. Similarly, if a Bluetooth device like AirPods is connecting to a nearby cell phone, the intensity of the radiation coming from those wearables is going to be much less, but it will be right next to your brain. When you're exposed to a source of radiation that is further away, such as a cell phone mast or tower, you are receiving a whole body exposure. Keep in mind that even though the distance of the mast may be much further than the wearable Bluetooth device, it may be exposing you to even more radiation. It depends on the intensity of the radiation being emitted by the tower. But for a given intensity, if you double your distance from the source of irradiation, your exposure will drop by 3/4, and that's known as the inverse square law. I mentioned earlier that until relatively recently, we have not been exposed to high intensities of electromagnetic fields and radiofrequency radiation in the natural world. As such, we have not developed any sort of protective mechanism to prevent these forms of radiation from penetrating into our body. In this graphic, which was provided to me by Professor Chamberlain, who you're going to hear from next, you can get a sense of what happens when these forms of radiation interact with the skin surface or any form of matter for that sense. The wave is partially reflected and partially absorbed. You can see that the intensity of the radiation diminishes as the radiation gets deeper and deeper into the body. The depth of penetration, as it is called, varies depending on the frequency and wavelength of the radiation. So higher frequencies penetrate less than lower frequencies. Our bodies have been designed to protect us from excessive heating from the sun's rays. We have a chemical compound in our skin called melanin, which absorbs light frequencies and diffuses their energy back into the environment in a form of infrared energy. In this way, our body temperatures can be maintained in the sunlight, but that system can be overridden. Now take a look at these two images on the right. The image of the finger labeled A is a normal view of the finger in daylight or any sort of ambient light. But if we put a very high intense light underneath the finger, the light radiation can actually penetrate through the entire digit and come out the other side, and that's why the finger looks like it's glowing on this image. With radiofrequency radiation, we're talking about lower frequencies that can penetrate much deeper than light. Unlike light, lower frequencies of EMR can penetrate through the walls and other objects, in addition to reflect off the walls and become absorbed. The radiation emits in every direction at once, like a light bulb, and creates an inhomogeneous cloud of energy. Let me see if I can get that to... It produces a cloud, and as you can see, it penetrates through the walls and the ceiling. We know this is true because when we turn on our laptop and we're looking for a connection, we can be connected to our neighbor's Wi-Fi. So what happens to the cells in our body when they are energized by this radiation? Several observations have been observed scientifically. For one, there is a membrane depolarization effect, which can lead to the activation of ion channels. Calcium channels in particular have been observed to open, and this allows for the influx of calcium into the cell, causing an imbalance and stressful condition. Cells exposed to EMFs have been shown to become stressed out. The technical term is called oxidative stress. What does this mean? It means that the cells exposed to EMFs produce a group of compounds called reactive oxygen species. These are unstable compounds that are reactive because they are looking for electrons so they can become more stable. Oxidative stress is a nonspecific cellular reaction that can occur from all sorts of stressful conditions and toxin exposures. And indeed, it does happen under normal circumstances as in addition, but the cell has mechanisms to combat this and neutralize the reactive oxygen species if they're not overly abundant. Regardless, EMFs have reportedly been shown to be a source of this cellular chaos. Researchers have evidence that oxidative stress is a result of increased intracellular calcium, but it may also be occurring through the interference of the energy and the passage of electrons and protons in the electron transport train in mitochondria, a process which is constantly employed to produce cellular energy currency called adenosine triphosphate. And this was just written up in a paper by Paul Heroux, which was very well written, and I recommend taking a look at it. When cells undergo stress, unfortunate things can happen. Membranes, which protect the cell and control the cell's internal environment, can become the source of electrons and become damaged, which causes the cell to lose its ability to function and can actually put the cell's life at risk. Proteins in a stressed out cell can become damaged and denatured. This may sound esoteric, but consider that many diseases now common in our population, like Alzheimer's disease, Lewy body dementia, and amyloidosis, are all associated with protein denaturation. Importantly, when a cell is stressed, its DNA can become damaged, as Dr. Davis mentioned. This can lead to mutations and possibly cause cancer. The cell's mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell, can also become damaged and produce less energy and run less efficiently. You can imagine that if one continues to eat the same amount of food every day, but his or her cells can't use that food as efficiently, they will convert the excess food into fat and gain weight. Although the process of oxidative stress is not unique to EMFs, a few things do differentiate the effects of EMFs from other toxins. And this is important to understand. Perhaps the most important is that radiation only affects cells that are directly exposed to the radiation. This is different from, say, ingesting a toxin which then circulates through the bloodstream and gets disseminated throughout the whole body. If you wear earbuds, your ear and brain will be exposed, but your abdominal organs will have much less exposure. Most cells in the body are static, but not blood cells and cells of the immune system. These cells travel throughout the body and can therefore be exposed in the head and neck, and then travel anywhere and everywhere, having their effect at a distant site. Another important consideration that differentiates radiation from other sources of toxicity is that radiation doesn't respect tissue boundaries. You may have heard of the blood-brain barrier, for instance. This is a protective boundary designed to prevent toxins in the bloodstream from getting into the brain. Radiation goes right through this barrier. In general, it seems that the superficial structures in the body are at greatest risk for cellular oxidative stress from EMF exposure, particularly for higher frequencies. And we're going to take a look at the most common organs, and those include the breast, thyroid, testes, colon, and the brain. I mentioned that EMFs can cause cellular membranes to depolarize. When this happens to red blood cells, they can become sticky to one another and form chains or aggregates called rouleau formation. These slides were shared to me by Dr. Magda Havas, who is also speaking at this online seminar, and perhaps she will also present these slides to you. These two images were obtained utilizing a technique called dark field microscopy. In the left image, obtained prior to radiation exposure, a subject's blood was collected and placed on a slide. The image provided on the left shows a normal distribution of red blood cells. After the same person was exposed to a 2.45 gigahertz Wi-Fi router for 10 minutes only, their blood was again collected and placed on a slide, but this time the cells were stuck to one another, forming long chains. The same phenomenon can be observed with diagnostic ultrasound. These are images from a scientific paper I recently published in the journal Frontiers in Cardiovascular Medicine. With ultrasound, you are using high frequencies of sound to generate an image. The sound waves bounce off tissue interfaces in the body and produce an echo. The object the sound hits needs to be of a certain size in order to produce that echo. Based on the frequency of the transducer we used, the smallest objects that can be detected with the ultrasound are 154 microns. Why is that important? I want you to know that the red blood cell thickness is only 2 microns. So in a normal situation, which is this video here on the left, I'm going to show you what's called a cine clip. You can see that the interior of the vessel, which is the dark black band going across the image, it's a little jumpy, but you can get the idea. There's no echoes inside the lumen, except for some artifact along the upper part of the vessel. But after we expose the same person to a cell phone, we put a cell phone against her leg for 5 minutes and then repeated the study, you can see that the interior of the vessel now has all these little white dots within it. And each one of those white dots represents a cluster or an aggregation of red blood cells. It's an abnormal state. As I mentioned, it's called rouleau formation.